Hey there, this is Christine. Thanks so much for tuning into my Mostly Keto Kitchen. What I want to talk about today is the importance of ketosis. So remember, ketosis, and that is making ketone bodies, is normal and it's natural and it's something that we relied on all throughout evolution. So it's something that I think could really be a great nutritional tool for people today. So people who are looking to improve their health, ketosis is a great place to look. So let's talk a little bit about where those ketone bodies come from. So we've got glucose over here. Glucose makes up the starch that we eat, and so that's just basically carbs. And we get carbs from other places like fructose and lactose, but glucose is by far the most abundant sugar that we are eating in our diet. So again, it's going to be pasta and rice and bread, starchy vegetables, corn, etc. So there is no shortage of starch in the diets that we eat. So anyway, when we have had enough food, okay, and so we're not in a position of needing some energy, then we're going to store the glucose that we eat. And first it gets stored as glycogen, and that's what this sort of branched looking thing is. That happens in the liver and in the muscles. But there's only so much that could fit in there. And so once you've maxed out on the amount of glycogen that you can store, the glucose then gets broken down and gets stored as fat. Okay, now it's not glucose itself that's sitting in there in the fat. The glucose gets broken down into these little 2-carbon chunks, and then those get resynthesized into this triglyceride. And so remember, we've talked about this before. Triglycerides are like these little E-shaped things. It's got a glycerol backbone, and then it's got the fatty acid chains. So the fat is stored because it is there to be used later. That's why we store fat, and that's why it's important, because there used to be times when we didn't have enough food, and so we would need our fat in order to survive. Well, we are now, of course, in this position where we've just got abundant food all the time, and so we never need to use our fat stores. Well, we want to be able to use our fat stores so that we don't get fat, okay? And so the idea is that the triglyceride will come out of the fat, and then it gets broken down. The glycerol backbone gets broken down into the glucose, and the fatty acid chains, those get broken down into the ketones. This doesn't happen unless you've been exercising a lot and you've used up your glycogen that way, or you're eating a low-carb diet. The low-carb diet is going to deplete this glycogen store, in which case that's when the fat can then turn into the glucose and the ketone bodies. Once you've created the glucose and those ketone bodies from your fat stores, those go into your bloodstream, and they enter into your cells and they create energy in your cells. So that's the way to get the fat that you're carrying around on your body into energy, which is really a good thing, right? We need more energy. We need to feel better. We need to be functioning well. And so getting that energy into the cells is really important. So one of the things I think is so important here is that we, and I've written down here, teach your body to do two things. One is to make those ketones, okay, and to go through this process that I've shown here. And the other thing is to use the ketones. If you've been eating carbs from the beginning of your life, and that's mostly what you've had, and you haven't had fat, and you bought into the low-fat whole concept, you are probably just really relying so much on your glycogen stores going up and down, and you're not going into this phase of making ketones and using ketones. And so it's like just a second system, and we need this second system. Our brains need the second system, a bunch of organs in our body need this second system, and to not have it up and going and fluid is detrimental to our health. So making the ketones and using the ketones, you can feel a little funky, and this is what's called the Keto Flu, as your body is learning how to do it. However, having an increased amount of salt can make it better. And salty food, generally pretty tasty, so I don't mind too much that having, eating low carb, but then having a little bit more salt in my food. And we can talk in another video about why that is that happens. So keto flu can be minimized through salt intake. But once you get to the place that you are making ketones, then you're gonna have way less hunger. And that's something that I've really appreciated. I can now exercise fairly strenuously and I don't have that feeling that I'm like, oh, I gotta eat. And I used to be absolutely petrified about where my next meal is gonna come from and am I gonna get enough food? And now it's like, wow, even Steven, I have a calmer relationship with food because I have these ketones in my body. Now, I am not hardcore. I didn't do this all in one fell swoop. I did it slowly and I got used to eating this way. And now my ketones run kind of 0.7 to 1 millimolar, and I know that because I use my little keto meter, and I don't do it every day because the strips cost about $1 a piece, but I test myself somewhat regularly, and I test myself kind of when I'm feeling funny. If maybe I'm feeling good or I'm feeling not so good, and I'm just curious about what my ketone levels are, and I also check my glucose then too, just to kind of see, am I making them? And I pretty much make them all the time now. I had sweet potatoes this morning for breakfast and a little bit of dark chocolate, 72%, and I still came out at a 0.7 for my ketones. So they are there all the time now, and it's nice. I can use them when I need them. So pretty awesome. All right, so I hope you've gotten some good information out of this. Be brave, try it. It doesn't hurt. And I would be happy to answer questions if you've got any. And you can email me at christine@laplatahealthcoach.com. Thanks so much for tuning in.